My name's Connor Strange. I am a theatre design and production student at the University of Wales Trinity St David. I've also worked in the theatre and live events industry as a practitioner, a technician, whatever you want to call me. I'm very excited to be doing this podcast. We're going to be talking about different issues around theatre, mental health, and various other things as well. We're going to have some special guests on as well, but I'm not going to reveal too much at this point. So stay tuned to find out more. In this episode, I'm going to be going over a bit about my life, how, where I've got to, how I've got involved in different things along the way. I'm going to split this up. So in this portion, I'm going to talk about everything up to about 2015, which in the grand scheme of things is a hell of a long time, but it's relatively short on paper. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about how I got involved in various things along the way. And then in the next episode, I'm going to be talking about theatre in a bit more depth and what I've got involved with since coming back to Wales in 2017. So let's get cracking. Before I start, just want to make people aware that this podcast episode may contain material for some that may be upsetting or triggering. So if you don't want to hear any themes surrounding mental health, then please stop listening now. So anyway, to truly understand my story, you need to know a bit about me to start off with. So where to start? I'm originally from Glenalmond in Carmarthenshire, but I've lived in England for about 4 years of my life, the Lake District and Oxfordshire. I enjoy walking, listening to music, and volunteering in my spare time. Nowadays, I'm a freelance theatre technician working on theatre productions and live events. Well, that was until COVID happened. I'm also a student, as I mentioned in the intro, at UWTSD. Let's rewind the clock a bit. Let's go back to primary school, which for me was a hell of a long time ago. So when I was in primary, I was bullied by pupils and even some teachers. I lost confidence in myself, other people, and teachers who I thought were meant to be role models and someone to look up to. I withdrew and became isolated, and this was only the start. In secondary school, things got worse. People would say horrible comments to me, telling me to harm myself or to end my life. It made me feel very depressed and isolated, and I felt that I was not worth living. Now, school reports were just a small fragment of an indicator that things were going wrong in my life. I noticed, and I think so did my family, a drop in my performance. I couldn't face going into school as I didn't want to face the torrent of bullying that I was receiving. This made me feel worse. I felt like a failure, and that I was never going to amount to anything at the rate I was going. At this point, I knew that there was something wrong in my mind, but did not comprehend what was wrong until many years later. Now, I'm doing this to raise awareness of one thing. Talking about mental health is really important. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast, is to bring the point home. I do a lot of volunteering and awareness around mental health. But yes, the point I'm trying to make is it is important to speak about mental health if you're struggling, and you should never have to suffer in silence like I did. I suffered in silence for many years. Nobody ever cared, apart from family. I was bullied by teachers and people, that I was expecting to be role models, somebody to look up to. But unfortunately, that's not quite how it worked. Now, I spoke to my family about what I was going through, but they really didn't know what to do at the time, or even how to react. It was a completely new and unexpected thing for them to deal with. Some of my friends at the time were supportive, but slowly they showed their true colours and drifted away from me. I lost trust very quickly in people, and my confidence dropped like a sack of potatoes. Now, I want to point out something. Even though I had a really negative experience in school, I still persevered, and I managed to get 5 GCSEs, grade A star to C, Welsh Baccalaureate qualification. So I did get something out of school, although it wasn't what I wanted. Throughout my school life, I was proud to have become involved in several extracurricular activities and clubs. I represented the school at the Urdd Eisteddfod, and I represented pupils on both school council and UREPS groups as well. I did get something out of school. It's just not exactly the experience I wanted. Now, moving on to college, I left school and I went to Coleg Sega in around 2011, 2012, and I studied creative interactive multimedia, or creative iMedia for short. So that's things like video editing, sound editing, animation. Now, I had a really good experience in college, as there was a lot of support available to students. For example, there were student support and liaison officers, a dedicated counsellor, mentors on hand to talk to with any concerns or problems. I had a really good experience, and I felt that I was listened to and that the college wanted to support its students. There was empathy from staff that I hadn't experienced in the past. My short time in college, I was only there for about a year. I was involved in many different things on campus, including being elected as Vice President for Activities on the Student Union, and I also represented the college as a student ambassador. Very proud moment when I can say that I escorted an Estin inspector around the college. Estin's Her Majesty's Inspectorate for Wales, if you weren't aware of that. I left Wales about a year later for work reasons, and I moved to England, where I lived with my grandparents for a few months until I tried to find a place of my own. Unfortunately, I couldn't find much work until I stumbled upon the Prince's Trust programme. So during 2014, I was on the Prince's Trust programme based out of Newtonrig College, just outside of Penrith. Penrith is along the M6 corridor. Capital of Cumbria is Carlisle. It's not that far off the Scottish border. Anyway, this isn't a geography lesson. As part of the programme, I was required to do a work placement with a local organisation, and I decided I wanted to try my hand out at local radio and press. So I decided that I would go and do my work placement with Eden FM Radio. They're a local community radio station serving Penrith and the Eden Valley. At the time that I was there, they were broadcasting online, but shortly, couple of months afterwards or something, they were granted an FM frequency and a license. Definitely sounded like a perfect fit to me, to be honest. So I asked the station manager if I could do a placement. To my delight, they approved my request, which was amazing. Felt over the moon. And while I was there, I got the chance to do a variety of different tasks, ranging from production of programs, research for the sports program, co-presenting alongside other presenters, and various other things. And at the end of the placement, I was offered the chance to produce and present my very own show. To this day, I still can't remember what it was called, but it was the very first time that I'd ever presented live on the radio, and was a very surreal experience at the very least. At the end of the show, I was offered the opportunity to come back and volunteer for Eden FM, so obviously I agreed, and I went on to produce a number of shows, including specialist shows like the Naughties show, and I also hosted Drive Time for a while as well. I'm extremely thankful to the team at Eden FM for allowing me to volunteer at the station. They supported me in developing my skills in presenting and producing shows of a high calibre, which still serves me very well to this day. So, during my time living in Penrith, I also volunteered at Penrith Players. They are a permanent member-run theatre in Penrith, and they rely on volunteers to run the venue. I supported one of their productions, which was Blackadder Goes Forth. I was a member of the stage crew, moving set pieces and elements onto and off stage. This was my first experience working backstage and supporting a production, and it got me thinking about where I wanted to go from there, future aspirations and all, and I decided that I wanted to work in some part of the creative industries. I'm very thankful to them for the experience, as it gave me a real insight into productions and the amount of work that is put into making a play into a reality. But not all my time in Penrith was positive. In April 2014, while living in Penrith, I was struggling very, very much with my mental health, suffering numerous breakdowns and panic attacks, and I really needed to speak to somebody about what I was going through, so I went to see my GP, who referred me on to a psychiatrist. So I can remember to this day the psychiatrist telling me what exactly was wrong in my mind. He diagnosed me with depression, anxiety, and emotionally unstable personality disorder, which is sometimes referred to as borderline personality disorder. They are the same thing. Some people call it differently. I'll go on to talk about that condition a little bit later on. So I was referred on to a community mental health team and prescribed medication. I definitely began to feel that there was a path to recovery ahead, but it was going to be an exceptionally long path. With this newfound knowledge, I finally knew what was wrong in my mind, and I'm very, very grateful to Penrith's community mental health team for the support they gave in getting me through an extremely difficult period in my life. In the December of that year, in December 2014, I decided to work for a large nationwide mobile phone sales company. I enjoyed the work, and the interaction with so many people from different walks of life was a great perk of the job. However, when my mental health affected me, I was not supported by management or even the colleagues that I worked with. I hit rock bottom, and when I saw advice from my manager, I was told that I should just man up and deal with it. Fortunately, these are phrases that are chucked around a little too often today. I tried to carry on, but 9 months later I gave up and walked out of the job. Probably not the best decision that I ever made, but it was one that I made to safeguard my mental health before it got to the point of no return. Now, I mentioned earlier about EUPD, Emotionally Unstable Personality Disorder. I feel that it's a good time to share just some of the feelings and behaviours that I have towards people when I'm in a low state of mind. So these are just some of the feelings that I can have when I'm in a low state of mind. Now, these are not exclusive. These are a full list. It's just some examples. So things like intense emotions that last from a few hours to a few days and can change quite quickly. For example, from feeling happy and confident to suddenly feeling very low and sad. Not having a strong sense of who I am, and can change significantly depending on who I'm with. I can also find it hard to make and keep stable relationships. And very, very uncommonly, and this is when I'm in a really bad place, in a really low state of mind, I can have very intense feelings of anger, which I can find very difficult to control. But as I said, this is only when I'm in a really low state of mind. And I think it's very pertinent that I make people aware about this, because a lot of people suffer with borderline personality disorder, emotionally unstable personality disorder, whatever you want to call it. So I find it very important to share this kind of information so people are aware of what to look out for. It's good to have a diagnosis because I'm aware of what's going on, and people are aware of what I'm going through as well. It's not easy having this condition, this disorder. It's some days it can be very difficult to carry on, and sometimes you can find it very hard to have some purpose in your life. But I find it very important that I'm here at university, keeping myself going, keeping myself distracted. I will talk about university in a later episode. We're going to wrap up now on this episode. I wanted this one to be just an idea of what's going on in my mind, in my history up to 2017. In the next episode, I will go through a bit more about what I've done since I've come back to Wales, the kind of experiences that I've had, talking about theatre, talking about volunteering with Time to Change Wales. That will be discussed as well in the next episode. Also talking about volunteering at Swansea Pride, volunteering at the Insomnia Gaming Festival in Birmingham, working on German production Cinderella pantomime in December of 2019, December 2019, and then fast forward to the present day throughout 2020, talking about COVID, talking about live events, how the industry has been decimated, and where we're up to now, really. So hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. I can understand that it's a sore topic, but I want to make people aware of what I'm going through and what other people are going through out there as well. That it's important to speak about your mental health. Please do not suffer in silence. Just reach out to somebody. Reach out to a friend, a family member, a colleague, police officer, doctor, nurse, somebody at your local supermarket even. Whether it's somebody, they'll understand what you're going through. And if they can't, they'll know somebody that'll help.